Hello and welcome to Berries and Tea episode 27. I have had a very long break and I'm so happy to be back on the show. And today we have someone very special called Stephanie, and she'll be talking to us about what does it mean to heal. And there she is, Steph. Okay, I'm inviting you to join. Rona. All right, so let's see if Stephanie joins. Steffi, it should work. And there she is.
Hello, how are you? Got my cup of tea.
You got your tea, got my cup of tea too. Okay, so Steffi, I just started with just literally saying that today's episode 27 of Berries and Tea. Can you imagine? And I'm
Wow.
so happy to have you on board. So I'd like us to tell you a little bit what you do, and then let's jump into that question. What does it mean to heal the emotional wounds that we have?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come and have a chat with you. Now that we've got the VPN sorted, it's all good, right?
Yeah.
So what do I do? Basically, my journey started in the medical field. I started working, I have always had an interest in health and healing in different aspects. I worked in the medical field. I was a personal trainer. I now teach yoga. But along that way, really probably the catalyst for me was when my daughter was born with Down syndrome. And she's also later diagnosed with autism. So that sparked me on a healing journey, really. And I've learned a lot through that journey in itself. It's really pivotal to my own, to my own understanding of what it means to heal. So I think in order to be a healer, it's important that you actually take responsibility for your own healing first, right? Before you go on that journey to help others. So what I do is a combination of integrated healing, which combines color therapy, essential oils, Reiki, energy healing of different sorts, Akashic record contract clearing, so helping people to, set them to understand why certain things have happened in certain relationships with, their loved ones. Really a myriad of things. Crystal healing, so it's all kind of come together. Sound healing, it's a bit of everything really, and postural and breath work through the yoga stuff. So yeah, really just a lot of it has come, every time I come across a new modality, I always think that it's for my daughter, and then I find out that it's actually for me. So that's always the way it goes. But I'm grateful for that, because I wouldn't have stumbled on those things if I didn't have her. I'm not sure that I would have come across them as easily as I have.
Well, I think it's just beautiful that your daughter awoke those healing powers within you, so that not only could you help her help yourself, but also help so many others.
Yeah, I think I'm always grateful to her. She's a natural healer. I mean, when I have clients, because it's summer now and she's here in the house, she'll often come in. It's interesting. She'll break through the door, but not the beginning of the session. But sometimes she'll come in as the client's leaving. And a few clients have said to me, like, I don't know what your daughter did, but there was something profound. I felt something really profound in her hug. And I'm like, yeah, the healer. She's a natural healer. She doesn't need to say anything like I do. Doesn't need to talk to you. It's just there. So I always say she's like Yoda and I'm the Jedi, learning from her. So that's the way it is.
Wow. Well, I look forward to meeting her and trying out one of your healing modalities on my own self. Okay, so Steffi, what does it mean to heal then?
So I think really, like, from my perspective, and I'm sure you probably you resonate with this as well, we're multi-layered beings, right? We are emotional, mental, physical, energetic and spiritual beings. And there's many more layers to us that we're not even conscious. We're becoming aware of these other layers that extend beyond our physical body now. So I think in order to heal, if we go to the basic thing of what most people understand, I think most people can relate to physical healing. So I think physical healing, most people, you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, your body, you get a cut, there's a wound, you're exposed. And then, whatever way you choose to heal that. Your body has a natural capacity to do that, but sometimes we need stitches, or sometimes we need some kind of healing potion or cream or whatever it is. So I think people can relate to that physical, aspect of healing. I think most people like, no, they're not going to deny that that's something that occurs, right? When it comes to mental healing, I think we're coming more into that now, that people are also acknowledging there was always a stigma behind it. I think now it's much more open, and it's really amazing to see so many more people embracing the idea of like, yeah, we need to look after our mental fitness as well. And that things do happen to us, whether that's almost a physical thing that happens to the brain, or whether it's, actually something that crosses over the mental emotional kind of barrier, because they all interlap, right? I think emotional healing is something that is frightening to a lot of people. I feel like I feel like we have a lot more awareness around it, but I feel like it's still that kind of, that little layer that people are just kind of wanting to open, but there's a lot of fear around vulnerability and exposing, what you know what I mean? It's like, if I am angry, am I damaged? Or if I'm, really sad, are people going to judge me? There's always this element of judgment when it comes down. Nobody judges you when you get a wound in your arm, right? Nobody goes, you don't judge yourself, or nobody judges you when you have a gash, right? But for some reason, we judge ourselves when we have emotional wounds. For me, what it means to heal, one of the basic fundamentals is that we have to feel it first. We have to feel it first, and we have to acknowledge, like, what is my wound? Like, what is the actual wound itself, right? So I don't know how you feel about that.
Okay, so yeah, so this is quite close to home for me right now. Let's say if, because obviously, I'm a coach and I work with people, and, I'm supposed to be like this perfect human being with no wounds and no trauma from the past, but that is not true, right? And the only reason I'm able to help others is because I go through my own journey. But I realized, Steffi, last night that I still have a wound from my last relationship. And it's not, and it's it's just sadness. Would that, am I identifying it correctly? Because that's how I feel. It's not like I feel, I'm not angry. I'm not, there's not much I could have done. I'm not even judging the person at all. It's just, I'm so sad for the moment that I'm, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm just so sad at what you went through. Would you consider that as a wound?
Yeah, I would, because well, first I would ask you, are you uncomfortable with the sadness? Does it cause you pain? Does it feel pain? Is the sadness uncomfortable for you? Do you wish it would go away?
I didn't ask myself that. So let me just think about it. So it's causing me a little bit of a physical discomfort just below my right breast. I feel that.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I talk about it a little bit more, I feel like my voice will start to shake a little bit. I'm so aware, right? and I feel. But I almost feel like, oh, it's okay if it's with me, because it almost feels comfortable, familiar to have it with me rather than be without it.
Okay, it sounds, sorry about that. It sounds like you're that was Ruby, by the way. It sounds like you are allowing yourself, so one of the things too is that what you just identified, which was where you actually feel it in your body. That's really important. And I think like a lot of people don't as well, not always associating or asking ourselves, like, my trigger, my emotion that I have most vulnerability around is anger, because, it's a trigger for me. Like if I get angry, I have this voice that says, you shouldn't be angry, like you're a bad person, all of these things. And But if I really ask myself, where is this in my body? Like you've just said, you feel it below your breast. You feel it. This is where you feel it in your body. Sometimes that can be so helpful and so useful, because often when I'm angry, I feel it, you know, in my belly. I feel it in my belly, and I feel this like kind of rising up. So it's like, if I know that it's there, then I can use all my tools to help me guide myself through it. I can do some breath work. I can do, maybe I can have a chamomile tea. That actually calms me down a lot. Simple thing of having a chamomile tea. But I know in the time when we're in these emotions, sometimes there's two things that I feel like with my clients and also with myself. We want to disembody with the uncomfortable emotions. So we want to check out of our bodies because sometimes it's too uncomfortable, right? But you were saying you're comfortable with it. So, you know, I would say that that's a very healthy way to heal, because you are acknowledging your pain. You're acknowledging the discomfort or where this is sitting in your body. And then you're also acknowledging it's okay to be sad, you know? So I think like really that's part of what it means to be healed. And then it's like, okay, you know, for these emotions that are, you know, grief, for instance, grief doesn't go away in one day. It doesn't go away in a week. It maybe doesn't go away in 10 years, depending on the depth of, but it's about learning coping mechanisms to acknowledge and move through those spaces. You know, and I think the acknowledgement is the number one thing. Like in order to heal, we have to feel. We have to know what we're feeling. We have to identify. We're crying. What are we crying for? Are we in anguish? Are we grieving? Are we in, you know, are we sad? Are we so angry we're crying? Are we so happy we're crying? You know what I mean? Like, what are we actually, we need to understand what the feeling is. We need to be able to label those feelings first. And then, you know, and just like anything, I mean, I'll give you an example of my journey. When I had my daughter Ruby, she was diagnosed with Down syndrome. I immediately, inside of me, I felt pain. If I go back, I didn't know at the time I felt pain. What I did was I immediately took a warrior stance and said, this baby is going to be like, da, 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 da. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And she's amazing, and da, da, da. And I never even allowed myself to cry, you know, and I'm not, and I have to be very careful, because I wasn't sad about the fact that I had this baby. Was beautiful. It was my baby. But the point is that yes, there has to be, if I was honest with myself, there was a grievance of getting a baby that I wasn't expecting, you know, and also a fear of what is to come with this child, because the world is telling you this is how it's going to be with this child, which is so not the case, actually. You know, everything I was told is really untrue about what I was told when I was born. But my point is that I didn't acknowledge those feelings. I pretended I was happy. I put on a face. And 6 months later, my thyroid blew out. And it blew out so bad that I stopped sweating, if you can imagine. So the throat chakra is your ability to express freely and truly. And I truly believe that that's how that manifested in my body, that it was so, the grief was so heavy and I didn't allow it to move up through and to express it, that it just got stuck there. Like grief is held in your, and it just caused a, I don't want to call it a blockage, but it caused a disharmony in my body. So that's an example I would probably say that I can relate to in my own healing journey.
So that I think you and I are quite lucky that we can now identify, like I'm sitting here and I'm identifying that emotion of sadness below my breast, and I know what it's to do with, and I'm okay with it. You know, I'm just moving through it. I know it's there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I want to do about it. It's just there and it's moving through. But what about the people, Steffi, that, and I've met those people that just have had an event, a traumatic event or a breakup or whatever, and are just completely deassociated or cannot even tap into emotions, feelings. What are they all about? You know, why can't one just say, oh, yes, I feel really sad? They're just so blank.
Yeah, and I think that we have to look back at our, you know, at our history and our You know, I think trauma is something that is a transgenerational thing. Like in my healing sessions, I am often healing transgenerational lines, and I'm able to see like this was passed to you from your mother and this came from your grandmother, and it's something that's held in your DNA. So it, you know, when they really talk about, you know, a mother being calm and whatever during pregnancy, and I never was, you know, it's like, you know, I was told that, and I was told, you know, your baby's affected by your emotions. I never believed that. I was like, yeah, whatever, you know, the baby's the baby. But I know that to be true, because if I look at my journey with each of my three girls, their different kind of quirks, or their the things that came up sort of resonate with how I was with the pregnancy, if that makes sense. So I think over history we've been taught. I don't think we know a lot about emotions. First of all, I think we've just never been taught. It's like there's certain things in life we know a lot. We know about a lot about the physical body. In school, you're taught about anatomy, right? We're not taught about emotional anatomy or mental. Like, you know, maybe we're taught a bit about how the brain works, but we're not taught about. We actually have an entire anatomy of emotions. You know, we have a whole energy system that governs all of that. We were never taught that. So I think part of it is just not knowing. I think part of it is societal conditioning. And I think one of the biggest things is that, you know, we've labeled things as good and bad. We've labeled them as good and bad. And when we label them as good and bad, so I tell a lot of times I'll speak to my clients and I'll say, okay, you know, anger, and they're reticent. A lot of them are reticent to say, you know, I do color therapy, and it will come up that, you know, this word anger, and you can see them kind of reeling when it comes up. And some of them are reticent to say that they're angry because there's a stigma around it, of that, you know, again, that if you're angry, or there must be something, you know, it's just not, you know, not the thing to do. But I say, well, anger can be a good thing. If you see a small child being harmed, you're going to be angry about it. That's a good thing, you know? And again, joy, you would say, well, joy is a good emotion. Well, it's not a good emotion if you're joyful that someone's been hurt. Again, see, you can always flip everything. So I think it's really about understanding emotions themselves, what they are, that they actually all have duality. There's no emotion that's good and there's no emotion that's bad. There are emotions that vibrate on a lower plane. So I have this beautiful diagram. Now, this is completely tattered and ripped because I use it. I need to print out a new one. So this is what's called the cone of emotions. And it is an excellent, like, so many people resonate when they can see this. For me, it was very powerful when I understood how this worked. So this cone, if you can see it, goes from at the bottom 20 all the way up to 1,000. So 20 at the bottom is shame, and 1,000 is enlightenment, right? Now, most of us are not at enlightenment quite yet, so, which is fine. And the whole premise of this is that the human body resonates around 55 to 65 megahertz on a healthy human body. This is on a physical level. So these emotions all have resonance as well. So for instance, it's quite interesting because guilt and shame are the two lowest resonating emotions. So shame is the lowest resonating emotion, 20, and guilt is 30. Now that's below our healthy human resonance, right? Now, it's not to say that you can't have guilt periodically, and these are feelings. They're all validated feelings, but the issue is when you stay in that for a long amount of time. If you're a mother and you constantly have guilt around spending time for yourself or whatever, you're actually putting yourself in a lower vibration than what your body, you know. I truly believe that things like cancer, I mean, I'm a prime candidate to show that I manifested a thyroid, like an autoimmune thyroid disease, because I wasn't coping with my emotions. I wasn't doing anything else different in that time, physically, with my diet. You know, no one can, you know, I know that was the number one cause. Environmental stuff, was that a factor? Yes, absolutely. You know, I had to go chemical free, all the rest. But it's just so powerful that I could physically feel like this massive, almost like this lump, you know, in my throat. It was like, and nothing was moving. I felt like my body was so stagnant. But moving into this, what I wanted to show is that we're talking about emotions and what is good, what is bad. Now, anger is 150. So anger is quite a little bit above what a healthy body resonates at. It's actually okay to be angry, but what are we told? Don't be angry, don't be angry. Don't cry, don't be sad. You know, don't have fear, you know, all of these things. But again, fear is 100. So it's, you know, and again, fear can be used in a positive way, right? So again, it's about how do we feel, and I'll send you a link. Actually, if people just Google cone of emotions, this is what it looks like. They can see all the things that are associated here. But it's really powerful, right? How do you feel about that?
So if I question my sadness, what is that at, the sadness? Is there a measure for that?
So grief, I would say it's under grief. It doesn't have sadness. It has grief, which is regret, despondency, tragic. So tragedy is like sadness, right? So that's at 75. So it's still like, yeah, it's I guess like in some ways, I just look at this as a mild guideline, right? I think like it's not to say again, like you can feel guilt. You're going to feel guilt. It's not going to go, that emotion's not necessarily going to go away, but you can get better at shifting from guilt to whatever, let's say courage. So courage is where the shift happens. Courage is 200, and that's where we go into it's power versus force. So this are the powerful emotions at the top, and these are the forceful ones that are, you know, they're a bit more, let's say they're contracted, and the top ones are expansion. And you can see that in the cone. Contracted, it goes up and it becomes more expansion there, right? So courage is a 200, and that is when I feel personally that courage when you make the decision to shift. You know, it's like, and it's not to say you can't be sad, because you've made a decision to find out where that is in your body. And also you're allowing yourself, and you've actually also been courageous to give yourself permission to say, it's okay to feel the sadness. Do you see how it's kind of like the awareness around it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like on that, if I were to connect it to the cone, I just feel like it's the good part of sadness. It's the good side of sadness that I'm just sort of relaxing into it. And once I go through it, I will come out into that courage or that joy, or, you know, or the other side of it. So that's really, I really like what you say about each emotion having more than one side, you know, like the anger, the fear, the sadness, the joy. That's a really interesting concept, because we always think like the only emotions to feel is joy, happiness, courage, bravery, you know, all of those happy things, and the negative stuff is not even allowed to, because that like lowers your frequency. You know, if you're sad, if you're fearful, it lowers your frequency. But now like I'm having a bit of a shift in perspective here, because, well, I'm feeling sad, and I can, but I don't feel like my frequency is being lowered at all. Quite the opposite. The fact that I can see it, the fact that I can identify it and allow myself to be there, I think that's very empowering. That's very uplifting, right?
So the courage, the word for courage, the process is empowerment. So with these, it comes, the emotion comes with the level, it comes, and then it comes with the life view and empowerment. So when you're in the phase of courage right now, you're sad, but you're also in the phase of courage of facing your sadness, right? So the life view is feasible. You're like, I'm going to be okay. It's okay for me to be sad. And also it's empowerment. I'm empowered because I know what my body's feeling, and I'm okay with it, and I can feel where it is, and you know, this too shall pass. So I think it's, this is what probably one of the most I'd say, like with the work I do with my clients, I would say one of the most powerful things is when I show them this and they realize that their emotions are validated, and that even the negative emotions or perceptive negative emotions, you know, can be a stepping stone to something where you can raise your frequency. Like you're allowed to acknowledge, you know, my trigger, like I said to you, is, and I have a trigger because my husband will say to me, don't be angry. Like he'll say, you know, my voice starts to rise, I'm getting agitated, and he'll say, don't be so angry. And it triggers me. Then I get angry. And now I say, well, okay, I am angry. Like, yeah, I'm angry. And I'm not going to say I'm not, you know? And why shouldn't I say that I'm angry, you know? Because I am. Like, and I do well. I'm not now, but I'm saying in that time. So, you know, why am I not going to acknowledge that? And maybe then I can explore, well, how can I best, and this is where I'm at now. And I'm not fully there myself. I am working through my way of how do I express my anger in a way that is not offensive to others, I guess, or not,
Right.
or not so that they can process it. How can I, use my embodiment? And I think that's something really important. We talked about when you asked the question, you can understand how you're feeling and I can understand how I'm feeling because we've been doing the work and this is our path that we've taken. And you say, well, okay, what about someone who's not quite there yet, or they're just learning or just figuring things out? Well, again, it's about the embodiment, and it's about embodying that emotion, feeling that emotion in the body physically. And probably one of the biggest tool is just asking yourself, when you feel out of control, sad, whatever emotion is making you feel uncomfortable. And funny enough, some people are uncomfortable with joy. Some people are very uncomfortable with joy. It's like joy comes and they have to sabotage it because they feel uncomfortable with it. They don't feel deserving of it. So it's really interesting, right? So it's not negative or positive. It's what do you feel vulnerable around? What do you feel vulnerability around? Not anger is negative, joy is positive. It's like, what do you feel uncomfortable about? And tell us, what does that make you feel in your body? When you feel joy, what do you feel? Do you all of a sudden feel fearful that something bad is going to happen because it's too good to be true, It's so
I love that.
Yeah, I just think like I've just learned so much from my clients in that way. I really have. And it's always the great thing about being a healer is that you get so much feedback and a mirror shining back at you of where you can learn and where you can, understand more. Because like I said to you, I'm not there yet. Like I'm really not. I'm very good with, understanding how other people work and I understand how I work as well, but I'm still learning. Like I'm still learning to regulate my emotions because I was never taught. As a child, it was always like, stop yelling, stop crying, any emotion stop laughing, don't make noise. Like, so.
And that's so interesting. Again, this point, okay, so emotions have many sides to them. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that how you perceive that emotion. What does that emotion mean to you? Not what the textbook says, right? So and I did go through that as well, Steffi, when there was so much joy in my life. And there still is a lot, and then there's a sense of fear that, oh God, this is too good to be true. Something will happen. I will fail at something. Something will break down, and so joy and fear can, like for me, are almost intertwined. Isn't that's like incredible? And just to observe that and lean into it and work through it and separate those. And then you say like you're not there yet. I don't think it would be even fun to be there already. Right?
It wouldn't. None of us are there yet. We're all learning. That's the thing. But the reason I say that is as a healer, I think sometimes people think, oh, you got your shit together. It's like, no, that's why I became a healer, because I had to do that work. And I'm still doing it. It's ongoing, right? As you know, it doesn't end really, does it? So it gets more, I think it gets to a point where you're like, you have more awareness. And when you have more awareness and then you have more tools, then you feel more empowered. That's what it is. I think that's, for me personally, it's like that journey of feeling empowered, that you have the tools, you know what the issue is in terms of, what am I feeling in my body? We're talking about emotional healing there, of course. I mean, it's the same mentally. What am I feeling mentally? Am I feeling, completely overwhelmed? Some people come in and they're not grounded because all their energy is sitting up here. And they just can't see anything, and it's amazing how once grounding them, they're like, everything just goes into place. Their emotional being is completely shifted. Everything shifts because every layer, as you know, affects the other, right?
Yeah. Steffi, do you see love as an emotion?
Yeah, well, love is sitting on here at 540 on the scale. I see love as a force, really. I don't I always struggled, and I kept thinking, I've never truly been able to say, okay, I feel like love is a culmination of many other emotions put together. That's for me, that's my experience. I don't know, I've never been able to go, oh, I feel love right now. Because I could say when I met my husband, I could say, oh, I thought, I'd say, oh, I feel love, but it wasn't. It was like physical attraction. It was emotional attraction, infatuation or whatever, and all those things together, in the beginning were, was that love? I don't know. Love for me, I think is a culmination of emotions. Like I love swimming because it gives me joy and it empowers me and it makes me feel strong, and I feel courageous when I swim in the sea because sometimes I'm fearful of jellyfish or whatever. But I love swimming because it gives me that, almost a menu of emotions that I experience, and it becomes an experience, right?
That's interesting because for some reason we always try to sort of kind of define love or justify love or give it some sort of logical reason, right? But like the sadness that I was telling you about that I actually feel below my breast, I feel it. Like can you also tap into that love? If you have love for someone, then surely you can tap into somewhere in the body in that emotion of love.
Okay, so give me five words that are, let's say we go with 5 words that describe your sadness in terms of not thinking of positive or negative, but genuinely, perhaps maybe even I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this, but no, I'm actually not going to describe it. I'm just going to literally say, give me 5 words around your sadness of, what you feel.
Okay. Blue.
Okay.
Sort of light. It's a light stream.
Okay.
Constant.
Constant.
Constant, light stream, blue, and pain and joy. I don't know why I feel that.
So you have given for your sadness, pain, blue, light stream, constant, and joy. So look at that. That's like a completely broad spectrum of other feelings that encompass this sadness. So do you see how you can take it a little bit further and be like, it's not just like I can be angry, but I might be nostalgic. So I might get angry about something because I lose something, but I'm actually nostalgic. You know what I mean? When you've lost, there's a sense of nostalgia. Maybe that's the joy, that's the joy that you're at the same time thinking about. Well, I was lucky to have this, I don't know. I can't speak for you, but do you see how you can expand on that, and it can be so much more than just sadness, really?
Absolutely. Now I understand if we were to tap into the emotion of love and expand on that, so it just becomes so much more than love, right?
Yeah, like for me, I can come up with 5 words now with love. I'm big on words. So when we do our sessions, I work with color. And what's amazing about that is that people are able to choose a bottle, and then that actually brings up a lot of words. We talk about what is in this bottle, what do you see in this red and yellow bottle, and they'll say things like the sun, whatever, and then it expands, and next thing you're like really tapping into what is the core feeling here, what's the core issue. So love for me would be presence, laughter, comfort, ease, and warmth. So those are 5 words I would put for myself around. That's, you know what I mean? But it could also be, I've chosen a lot of positive things there. So I used comfort and warmth. So I'm going to actually change the warmth to sadness, because sometimes, or pain, because I feel pain is a catalyst for love. I truly do. Again, it goes back to the wound. If I have a gash in my arm right now, you know, like sometimes when you're a kid and you're running along and you fall over and you're with your friends and you're just in such a frenzy, you're totally not grounded. You're running around and then you're running and you fall over and you get up and then you're running and then you're like, you see blood and you're like, where's that coming from? And you're like, oh my God, it's for me. Because you don't even realize that you've been wounded. You know, like I'm talking about when kids, because kids are so good at doing that. You know, they just keep running and they, they've got a gash on their head or this or that, you know, but it's not until you acknowledge and see, oh my gosh, I've fallen over, there's a gash in my arm. Then it's like, what happens then? You know, oh my God, now I feel pain, you know, I feel pain. So it's like, well, what do I do to bring this healing into my body physically? Well, I'm going to, you know, not sanitize. I'm so tired of that word. Not sanitize. Lovingly cleanse. Cleanse this wound, right? And I'm going to, you know, and if you're, you know, a child, then the mother's going to give you comfort, and, you know, or somebody's going to give you comfort, hopefully, I hope. And, you know, and then you're going to get it stitched if it needs it, or you're going to apply a Band-Aid to it, you know, and then you're going to take care of that, right? So it's really the same with emotional healing. It's like, you know, if I'm angry today because something really big happened to me a few weeks ago that made me really angry, it's quite possible I might feel that anger for some time. But how am I going to manifest that? And what are the other feelings around that? What are the words that go with this anger, you know? And going back to this pain as a catalyst for love, it's like, well, this is, you know, having this physical pain, you know, it's giving me a greater appreciation when I see my body heal of what my body can do. That's wonder, you know. And it's also, if I've fallen over and I've gotten hurt, my mother's given me, you know, I've maybe got some comfort from my mom that maybe I needed, you know, and on all levels. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just a way that I see things, that I feel like all emotions are an experience that are so much bigger than just the word itself.
Yes, I just learned that from you. I think it's incredible how, and it just goes back to what we said about emotional anatomy, that I think that should be an entire module at school or at university, or I don't know, just offered to everybody, because many of us are so estranged of how to identify emotions, what are they supposed to feel like, and how they have two sides and how we perceive them with one another, right? It's incredible. And I think emotional anatomy is probably a little bit more important even than the physiological anatomy, because that's where it all starts, right? Like all the chronic health issues start there. And so that would be at the root of it all. So Steffi, now that you spoke to me, what one of your incredible healing modalities would you recommend to me?
Well, I would recommend the integrated healing session for you, which is incorporating the color therapy. So what we do is we choose your color bottle. We sit down, we have a chat about it, because you might come in and say, you know, Steph, I'm actually here because I'm feeling really sad. So I might be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. But we'll see what, you know, we'll get the bottle, we'll see what comes up. And you might actually be coming because there's something much deeper than that. It may be you're sad because of a trigger of, maybe you had, you know, abandonment issues with your father. And that's why this is, you know what I mean? And I'm not just saying that I don't know what because I, you know, but it's like maybe you had that and maybe that's triggering something. So maybe the bottle's going to bring up something about your family, or, you know, it's really difficult to know, but at least that gets us on a little bit of a journey. And then we go into the Reiki, where I'm able to then read your energy centers. I'm able to then connect to, you know, let's say a lot of people right now, what am I working on for most people right now? 80% of people, I'm having to work on 3 major areas. One of them are the lungs, because we've just gone through a massive, obviously, pandemic, but not on the level of having to heal people's lungs physically. It's about grief, about having to be locked down, being away from their families, you know. So I'm actually having to work on the lungs an awful lot. Most people, almost everybody that comes in, we work on the lungs at some point. The other area is the liver, anger, frustration. Those are the emotions that are stored in the liver. So I'm working a lot on that. And also the adrenals. People are, you know, this has been a long road, and people are exhausted and don't realize that they're exhausted. They think they're tired because it's hot or this or that. But, you know, when we go in, and what are the emotions in the adrenals are worry and fear, anxiety, you know. So that for me is so powerful. If kids can learn that in school, like, wow, you know, if they can learn that, okay, you know, I'm grieving and it's okay for me. That's why crying is so important, to really let it out. It literally comes out of your lungs, like those ugly cries when you're like, ah, you know, like,
Yes.
you know, the reason
I've had one of those.
The reason you need to do that and why babies do it is because they're actually releasing that from their lungs on an emotional level. That is what we're meant to do, you know. And it's like, there's been so much shame around that, you know, we repress. Not only can we not do this ugly cry, we're now to a point where some of us are so locked up that we can't cry at all, you know. And so that manifests in the lungs. It stays in the lungs. It doesn't go anywhere. If you don't express, you suppress.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, that reminded me of something I told my amazing friend the other day. I said to her, you cry so beautifully, because she literally just cries with with a tear just dropping, you know, and it's just so beautiful. But she says, Nigora, because I can't let it out, because it's so hard for me to express, to let it go, especially in front of someone. So it's just this little tear. And when I cry, I'm like, you know, it literally is coming out from my lungs, and I have to like hold my face not to wrinkle it up. And it's all like coming out uncontrollably. And I wish it was just like that beautiful tear, like in the movies. I can't do that.
No, I think you're crying like the way you're doing it. Just keep doing that. It's all good.
Okay.
You're getting it out. You know? There's no
So
wrong
funny.
with crying.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, I'm just giving a physiological example of why it's important, because, you know, in the lungs, you know, to get that out, it's important to get it out. Because if you don't, like I said, if you don't express, if you're not expressing your emotions, you're suppressing them. And there's many studies out there. I mean, having a medical background, I am a bit of a geek with reading studies, and there are a lot of studies that show emotional suppression does lead to tumor growth with cancer. I mean, we need to start like expressing ourselves and really, you know, and like I said to you, I'm a prime candidate of that in the fact that I experienced that by not expressing myself fully, not being true to myself in my expression when my daughter was born, you know, with a disability. I suppressed it, and 6 months later it came like a massive dragon, you know, coming to engulf my thyroid, and that's what it did. And now 15 years later, I'm a year off my medication now. So I'm in the healing process. I've been an entire year of not being on that. And part of that process is really doing the emotional work. It's a must. And it's harder than ever. It's really not having the medication to numb me down, because I realized coming off the medication, it actually was suppressing a lot of really who I was. It was really suppressing my willpower, a lot of things, my motivation, my belief in myself. And I feel like now it's harder to be off it, but I know that I'll get there.
Yeah. Oh, Steph, thank you. I feel a whole lot better. But I do look forward to having that session that you said. So I'll message you about that. And we'll always finish off the interview by you giving 3 tips to our audience for just tips about anything that you would suggest to someone to, lead a happier, whatever, healthier, more conscious life. Any 3 tips that you would suggest?
Okay, so one tip I would suggest is learn how to breathe. Learn how to breathe. Belly breathe is the simplest breath. Learn how to do that properly. Lots of tutorials on YouTube. Some great books out there. Breathe is one of them. That's one tip. Another tip is to get your feet out on the ground, be in nature as much as you can. Again,
Everything.
when you're plugged in, your healing becomes so much easier. And again, just to allow yourself to start to ask yourself questions, give yourself that self-inquiry constantly. How am I feeling? If you're out of balance, it's like, allow yourself to feel. You have to feel in order to heal. I'm just going to stick with that one again because yeah.
Incredible. Thank you. So we've had breath, earthing, and feel in order to heal.
Yes.
Perfect. And for everybody else who has been watching or who will watch the recording, please follow Steph. And someone's saying hi, Steph.
And my daughter was on the, I think, as a hi, Lily.
Yes, I did see that. Yes, and book us one of the incredible sessions that Steph offers. You have so much on your offer list, right? So, and I look forward to having my session with you soon to work out my sadness from underneath my breast and bring it to surface so I can cry it out and let it out. But yeah.
And thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And thank you to all for listening. Next week we have something complete opposite. We'll be talking to Charlie from a company called Bodega. They do raw food for pets, and we'll be talking about the importance of feeding raw to your dogs and cats. So that's a completely other side of the spectrum, talking about animals and their well-being. So that'll be exciting. So tune in for that, Steph, too.
Okay, I will. I've got hamsters, so.
I think they're supposed to be vegetarians, hamsters.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. All righty. Well, have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next week. Lots of love. Bye, Steph.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.